Hey folks, it's Posi here to talk about the new release date trailer for Dragon Age the Veilguard. And thank you, a couple of you asked for this video and it makes me feel really nice to know that you still want to hear my take on all this. Y'all are the best. So I will give my reaction, of course, but since that would mostly just be me squeeing in glee, I'm also going to dig a little deeper this time and do a tiny bit of analysis for what I saw too, since there were so many new surprises revealed about the game and what I thought was going to be a simple release date trailer. So let's not delay. Here are 5 of my takeaways from the new The Veilguard trailer, plus I have a little bonus reveal of my own about my plans for my first Rook based on some inspiration from the trailer. So my first takeaway is that, am I crazy or did most people actually like this one? Let me just briefly get this out of the way first. While many people have been excited about the game as I have since the beginning, I know that there were a lot of people who have been disappointed and discouraged by what we've seen before this. I mean, just go read some of the comments on my reaction video for the first trailer. But at the time that I'm recording this now, there are 35,000 likes on the new trailer, and at least the first few comments seem to be generally positive, saying things like, "This is the trailer we needed to see." And while people can hate things all they want, and I'll just keep loving what I love regardless, joy is good, positivity is good, so it's nice that people like this one, I think. I do think that maybe the tone of this one was a little darker, which probably appeals to some of the folks who thought the others were too bright and cheery. I mean, this one begins with this gritty gray image of the Fade and Solas talking about the blighted gods. There maybe was a little pandering to the Origins only fans with the return of the Blood Dragon armor that will come with the pre-order of the game, but did people like that armor anyways? I don't know. I really can't speak for anyone else, I guess, but I'll just mark this down as a win and move on to some actual analysis now. My second takeaway is that Morrigan is back. If you're like me, the second time you gasp while watching this trailer, the first time being over the beauty that is Solas's eyebrows, was when you heard this voice.
You battle against gods. They will not rest until you are on your knees. Fearful. Cowering, helpless in the face of such power.
Because yeah, I love that beautiful swamp witch so much, and I actually didn't know that Morrigan's voice actor said she wasn't planning on returning, so this must have been even more of a surprise for a lot of people. But what surprised me the most was this headpiece that she's wearing, which, as a few people have already pointed out, looks a lot like her mother Flemeth's headwear design, which makes me think that there is a possibility that this is not actually Morrigan. In Origins, Morrigan told us,
"When her body becomes old and wizened, she raises a daughter, and when the time is right, she takes her daughter's body for her own."
And we've already seen Flemeth, aka Mythal, the matriarchal elven goddess, transfer her essence into an amulet in Dragon Age 2.
I agreed to deliver the amulet, though you could have told me you were inside it.
Just a piece. A small piece, but it was all I needed. A bit of security, should the inevitable occur. And if I know my Morrigan, it already has.
So maybe there was a part of her in the headwear that Morrigan now wears, or at least a part of her power. We saw Solas take her power in Inquisition as well. I haven't gotten to that part of my recorded playthroughs yet, so no footage of that. But I digress. It is possible that some of Mythal's energy is now living inside of Morrigan. Plus, we know that Mythal has been on Solas' side before in the fight against the Pantheon, so it makes sense that she'd continue to do so now that they've been released. And while I already know that Morrigan is going to have her usual scathing wit, I really also want to see Mythal tear Solas a new one for messing this up, and also for doing that whole essence stealing thing I just mentioned before. My third takeaway, the dwarves are going through it. When I saw Solas shatter Bianca in the gameplay reveal, I was already worried that something bad was going to happen to Varric, but the sheer lack of Varric in this trailer makes that fear even worse. I don't want to call it already because I want to have some hope that he could survive, but maybe, I don't know, get called back to Kirkwall to deal with some important business there, or maybe Bestie Dorian just really needs him to stay in Tevinter while Rook and the party saves the world. But the fact that the only Varric content we saw was the exact same content as the gameplay makes me not very encouraged on that front. I'm trying to prepare myself now for his probable death, but watching my favorite rogue and storyteller fall after spending 2 whole games with him might just be even more heartbreaking than the time we had to leave someone in the Fade. And he's not the only dwarf I'm worried about. We know that dwarves cannot use magic. Dagna studied magic to become a magical arcanist, but the only true exception to that rule that I've seen is with Sandal, the prodigy enchanter from the first 2 Dragon Ages. And in the past, I've seen some people present the idea that Sandal may be himself an old god. So, I think it's possible that through interaction with the elven gods, Scout Harding will get her own set of godlike talents, such as this petrification ability that makes sense for a child of the stone. But there is certainly going to be some bending of the magical rules here with her, so I imagine we'll get to watch her struggle with and hone her new talents to help protect the team, as she always has.
Good luck, and please be safe.
Takeaway number 4 is that these romance options are intense. And I'm going to use some outside sources on this one too, because if you've watched any of my Let's Roleplays or my romance compilations, you know that I am a sucker for a good love story. It's one of my favorite parts of any good RPG, especially in a Dragon Age game. So I've already been cooking up a plan for whom my first Rook is going to romance. After the first trailer, I was immediately drawn in by Davrin, because I love a renegade Grey Warden. I'm looking at you, Alistair, Anders, and kind of Blackwall. And I mean, look at him, he's freaking gorgeous. Plus a pet griffin? Like, sign me up. But then a few weeks ago, I read this article, which I'll link in the description, but basically it calls out Davrin's voice actor E.K. Amati for following Andrew Tate, Libs of TikTok, and the like on Twitter, or X or whatever. And while I know that some people are going to say, so what? What does that have to do with the character he voices that the writers created and probably worked really hard on developing? Or maybe just tell me that my politics are getting in the way. But I can't help it. I think representation is important, and I have a hard time separating art from artist. It's the same reason why I can't bring myself to romance Cullen ever again after learning about Dear Cullenites. And I don't know, I'm not officially writing off Davrin, but it did mean I went into the release date trailer looking for some of the other companions to catch my eye. Luckily, there are a few candidates, including Nev, whose romance is hinted at in the trailer, and Lucanus. So, for those of you who don't know, Lucanus de Amorte is an Antivan crow, the grandson of Caterina de Amorte, the first Talon of the Crows. And when I first saw Lucanus in the companion trailer, I thought, okay, skilled assassin, I guess I can see the appeal. But I recently picked up Tevinter Nights, which is a collection of short stories set in the Dragon Age universe, and I just read The Wigmaker Job by Courtney Woods, which shed some light on who this character truly is. In the story, he's sent on a job to kill this Venatori blood mage, and upon finding these tortured, mutilated slaves infected with red lyrium, Lucanus helps the enslaved elves escape, despite his cousin telling him to focus on the job. Even though he's a brutal and effective killer, he cares about the oppressed. He's called the Mage Killer, or in the story, the Demon, but there's a kind heart under those wings, and his character was created by Mary Kirby, the same writer who made our very own Varric Tethris. Kirby has also described Lucanus as the sole dumpster fire of the crew. I wrote him specifically to be a bisexual disaster of a human. You're welcome. And in my world, that's pretty much a green flag. So while I know I'm veering away from the topic of the trailer now, I did want to take a brief moment to talk about my own characters. I'm currently doing 2 playthroughs of Dragon Age Inquisition because I have 2 original characters whom I love, but couldn't decide which one was going to be my canon Inky. I know some people don't care about the whole canon thing, especially because we know Veilguard won't be using the Dragon Age keep, but I'm a storyteller, it's important to me. So after watching the newest trailer, I think I've officially decided that my Inquisitor will be Ashleen, my sarcastic, cunning, and kinda scary Dalish warrior and soulless romancer. And while I still do plan on finishing Mira's playthrough too, I realized that her character actually works perfectly for my Rook. It makes sense that Rook would be a Kunari, since they're at the core of a lot of the conflict in Tevinter. And Miravis is a Talvashoth mage, whose backstory is that she escaped the colony to prevent herself from being made a Cerebos, or maybe even made tranquil as mandated by the Qun. So it makes sense that she would become a shadow dragon to spend her life helping other oppressed people escape the yoke of bondage. So whether or not you end up watching my Veilguard Let's Play on this channel, I'm making it official here. In a couple months, get ready to meet a slightly revised Miravis II. And while I don't want to fully commit to a romance yet, because I'll let Mira make that choice on her own, we know that she does like short brown-haired men with a bit of danger surrounding them, but also a heart of gold. And as my best friend Sanaya has pointed out, the name Miravis de Amorte really hits. And now my last and probably most important takeaway. We saw Fenharel, soulless in Dreadwolf form, attacking an archdemon. This has to be my favorite part of the trailer, not only because I'm so glad Solus is still such an integral part of the story, but also because of what I just said about my canon Inquisitor. All of the Solavellans out there are probably losing it because of the possibilities for a reconnection between Solus and Inquisitor Lavellan. Whether that's an angry confrontation of betrayed lovers or a tearful and tragic reunion, I need to see these two together again somehow. And even if if you aren't a Solasmancer, what this hints at for me is redemption for Solas. Whether you love him or hate him, agree with his plan or not, see him as a villain or an anti-hero, it looks like Fen'Harel is going to rise up and stand with Rook against the other gods. Varric said in the gameplay reveal,
"He was my friend, Rook. I gotta try to reach him."
And that resonates so much with me here, because in Inquisition, I, and so many of us, really connected with Solas as a friend or a partner or even as an enemy. So his betrayal was impactful, and while of course Rook is the hero of this story, personally I think we all deserve a chance to see Solas's arc continue, and for him to have this grand moment of vindication. And with that, those are my major takeaways from the trailer. If there were any moments that I missed or some lore that might better explain some of my theories here, please leave me a comment. And I guess all that's left to say is, let the countdown to Halloween begin.